All right, welcome again, guys, to today's session. So far, from the past 6 videos that we have done, we have majorly been dealing with unit testing. And for today, we are on the last bit of testing, which is the integration testing of our microservice. So we'll be working on the controller testing, whereby we'll be able to do integration testing. And in this particular test case, we are not going to do any mocking. We'll be able to run the entire application against the test containers, and we'll be able to validate the operations of our endpoints. And to get started, we have everything set. So if it's the first time that you're watching this video, you can check our previous playlist on our previous videos on the playlist, so that you can be able to align up to the point we are, and then from there you can proceed. But then if you are ready to start on the controller testing, then we can proceed. So to do that, we are going to open our controller class, which is the department controller here. And then from here, we just going to write methods for the create department and get department by number, update and delete department, because mostly once we be able to create, we'll be making a call to the list all endpoint to get the particular details. So here there is no logic that is going to be, it's going to be a straightforward test cases. So to get started in terms of the test, we are in just to right click here and then click go to test, or you can make use of Ctrl+Shift+T, then click that and then click generate and then JUnit 5 and click enter to generate the class. And for this case, I'm just going to select the create department, delete department, get department by number, and then update department. And the list all will be able to make use of it in one of the functions or the test, so it will be able to be automatically tested. So with that, we can just click OK. Now here we have our class tests, the class department controller tests available. So the next thing that you're going to do is that, because you're going to bootstrap our application entirely, the entire application context, so we are making use of within the resources file, we are making use of MySQL. So that means we are going to make use of test containers to bootstrap our tests. So the first thing that we are going to do here, we are going to bootstrap the entire application context. So in this case, we are in just to annotate this particular class at Spring Boot test. And then with that, we are going to specify the environment or the port to which our test is going to run. So for this particular case, we just going to run on a random port. So in this case, we are just to do web environment equal to Spring Boot tests. So we need to make use of Spring Boot tests dot class, so dot web environment, then dot we are going to make use of a random port, and in this case we are just to make use of a random port to access our application. Now the next thing that we are going to do is have the test containers service connection. So in this case, we just to annotate this particular class as such test containers. Then once you're done with that, then what you're going to do here is going to be the same thing that we did on our JPA repository test. So if I open the repository test, we had this particular service container. So I'm going to copy these two code and copy that, then bring it here. So we need to bootstrap our application. So in this case, the MySQL service. So as you can see here, I have added the @container annotation and then the service. Let me minimize the sidebar. So we have this annotated as @container, and that is what is going to inform that create this particular container from Docker, and then the service connection is going to automatically bootstrap the variables that we require for us to set the connection. So automatically it will be able to set the JDBC URL, the password, and all that. Okay, now once we have that, then the next thing is to validate that we can be able to establish the connection. So what I'm going to do is also going to copy this particular assertion import statement to our class, so I can be able to have it just immediately above. So you can see that now we are copying this particular can establish connection test. And now for the moment we can just quickly run this particular test to confirm that everything is actually working. Okay, so for that we might just to click run test. So you can see within the debug console, it's actually bootstrapping the entire application from start to end, and you can see that it has been able to create the table, and it was able to run the test, and we're able to have the connection. So you can see that our test is actually green. If we check on the test result, you can see that our tests were ran correctly, but then you can see that we don't have any assertions for the rest. So you can see that the can establish connection is actually green, and that confirms that we are able to bootstrap our service connection and have it here. Now the next thing that we are going to do is going to now assert the created department. So what we need to do here is going to have two fields. The first one is going to be our service, ideally our path to our controller. So if I go to our controller, you can see that our base path is actually API department. So I'm going just to statically define this one as a string within our test. So let me close all this. So here we are going to define our base path for our controller. So it's going to be public or private, static. So static final sorry, final, and then string is going to be API base path. So you're going to have our API base path being equal to in quotes, and then you're going to have that as the path. So this is our base path for the controller. And then the next thing that we need is the client which will be able to use to make the call to these particular endpoints, and that particular client is going to be auto-wired. So whenever you're working with the Spring Boot test, you'll be able to have an automatic bin which is available for testing, which is going to be auto-wired, and this particular bin is going to be TestRestTemplate. So we are going to make use of TestRestTemplate, and automatically we are going to be provided this one within our application. Right, so that is said. So we are going to have this auto-wired. So from the controller side, you can see that we required the department service, and this one will be provided by default because we'll be able to bootstrap the entire application context. So we don't need any injection on this particular side. So automatically the application, whenever it's going to start, it's going to provide that particular service. So that's all that we need to do the setup. Now let's work on the create statement or the create department. So we are going to say whenever we are calling this particular endpoint, we require a payload, and this particular payload is going to be of department request. So I'm going to copy that, and we need now to define given, and given this department request, whereby we are going to define department request.builder dot a department name. I'm going to have the department name being computer science, right? Then dot build. Okay, so let me put them into different lines so that you can be able to see clearly on the particulars. All right, so we have given this department request. Now we need to call the actual endpoint. All right, so we need to call the actual endpoint. So to call that, we are going to say when ideally, so I'm going to have my comment here, when. Now when we do what? When we say what we're going to do is making use of the TestRestTemplate, which is going to be this variable rest-template. I'm going to give it the name as TestRestTemplate so that it's able to speak volumes. So with that, given that, then what you're going to do is now try to invoke the exchange. So you're going to do exchange, right? Now this particular exchange that we're going to do, we are going to call which path. Now here is where we are going to specify the path. So you can see that there is different range of methods. So I'm going to make use of this third that one, and in this case we are going to make use of the URI, and this particular URI is going to be our API base path. That is what we are going to call. Then from there we are going to have the next thing that we are going to have is going to be the method that we are using to call, and this case is going to be post. So I'm going to give HTTP method dot post. So we are going to make use of post HTTP method. So I can go and ideally let me import this one correctly here. So I'm going to now instead of this I can do a quick fix, and let me see where it's coming from. So it's actually supposed to come from HTTP method, so we can be able to import that. So we can just say import a static import. So import static, and then we're going to have that dot post. So we're going to import that statically here. So you can see now this one I can be able to do something like that to make it readable. So we are importing the post method. Then from there what we're going to do is going to send the body, and this body is going to be the department request. And now for this case we are going just to make use of new HTTP entity, and this particular HTTP entity we need to supply what? The body, right? So the body is going to be the department request, right? So that is all we need. So you can just quickly remove this T from here, so you can just have it that way. All right, so we require the base path, the method, and then the payload that we are going to send, right? And then what is going to be the return type? The return type is going to be a parameterized value. So we are going to have a new parameterized reference, right? And this particular reference we are just to leave it that way. So you can see that we need to specify the parameterized reference of object. Now in this case we are going to make use of ampersand, these two here, and to define our parameterized value. So I'm going to ensure this one is actually coming together that way. So here you can see that we need now to pass the value. So the parameterized reference that we are going to get back is going to be the department response. So we expect to have department. Let me bring them into a new line so that you'll be able to see clearly. New HTTP entity, and then we are going to have the new parameterized entity, and this one we are going to have of it being type of the department response. Okay, so that way, then from there we are just going to have the semicolon. So you can see that's quite simple. So you make use of the TestRestTemplate, then exchange the API base path, and then we are making a post request, our payload, and then our expected result. So we are going to expect it value which is going to be department response. So this one I can be able to quickly have introduce a local variable here. So we are going to get the response entity which is going to contain the response. So I'm going just to have it as response, right? So that is quite simple on how we make that call. Then the next thing that we're going to do is now to assert what is the status code of this response. So I'm going just to quickly do assertions. So we are going to do assert that the response, then dot get status code is going to be equal to, so we're going to make use of is equal to, then HTTP status from Spring Boot dot okay. So we're going to ensure that the value of the status code that we're going to get back is going to be HTTP status 200. And then the next thing that we are going to do, we can be able to get the actual payload, which is going to be the response body for this one, and we can be able to assert value. So what we're going to do here, we're going to say extract the value that we are getting from the creation process, and to do that we are going to get back the data. So in so doing, what we're going to do is once we create this payload, we have been able to get the 200 status okay. So we can be able to make the call to the department, what is called the list endpoint, and fetch the data. So what we're going to do is now make a call to list the data. So what we're going to do is going to make that call and get another list of the department response. So what we're going to do here is going to be simple. Then again, to make use of the REST template, TestRestTemplate.exchange. So we're going to exchange, and the same thing that we're going to do is the list endpoint is actually exposed on the same path. So what we're going to do is I'm going to minify everything here so that you can see. So we're going to build this one. The first thing is going to specify the API URL, so it's going to be API base path, and then we are going to specify the method, which is going to be get HTTP method. And then the next thing that we're going to specify is going to, we don't have a body, we are not sending any body, so we're going to send null. And then from there we are going to expect back a parameterized entity. So we are going to have new parameterized. So I'm going to copy this one also that way, and we can just have it here, new parameterized type reference. And here we are going to have a type reference of list of this department response. So we need to import the list from the util, right? So that's all that we need here. And then from there, as you can see here, I need another ampersand to close off that, right? Now from here, we can see that now we have made the call to get the data, right? To get the list of entities. So in so doing, what we're going to add here is going to be another variable, which is going to contain the lists. So I'm going to assign this one to a new local variable, and this one is going to be lists response. All right, so we are going to have the list response. Now the next thing that we're going to do now is going to do assertions on this particular endpoint. So the first thing that we're going to do again is going to assert that this particular endpoint is actually able to return us HTTP status okay. So I'm going to have this list response entity get status code is going to be 200. Now the next thing that we can be able to do is that we can check whether the list that is being returned contains a department which has this particular name, and we'll be able to be okay. So what I'm going to do here is going to be making use of the list response. So we're going to then dot get body. So we're going to do get body, and this one is going to give us the payload or the list, and then from here we can just say stream. All right, so what you're going to do is going to stream, and then from there we're going to filter, and the item that we're going to make use of to filter is going to be the department response is equal to, so we're going to make use of lambda there, and then we're going to say department response dot get the department name should be equal to, so we need to say check that it's equals signal equals, right? So we are going to check for equals, and then what we are going to check against is going to, or filter against, is going to be our department request dot get department name. So ideally it's just confirming that we are filtering entities which are able to have our department request, and after filtering we are going to find first, right? So find first is going to give us an optional, otherwise we are going to throw, or else throw. So we are going to, if we don't find that particular value, then we are going to throw, and automatically if we throw the value, then automatically our test will fail, right? So our test will fail if we don't find the value. So you can see here we are getting a potential null. So what I'm going to do is quick fix, and I'm going to make use of this particular body can be null. So what we're going to do is we're going to make use of objects from util dot require non null, right? So we are going to require non null of what, of this particular payload. So we're going to have this one, here. Right, so we are going to require a null of the list response dot get put. So that means we don't this particular test will fail if we have a null response back. Right, so from here what I'm going to do is going to assign the customer that was actually created. So in this case, the department that was actually created. So I'm going to assign this one into a new local variable. So we can just say department response, and then created department response equal to that. Right, so from here now we can be able, now once you have the department response, we can be able to make some assertions to this particular created department response. So to do that, what we're going to do here is going to make use of assert that the created department response dot get department number should not be null. So it's not null in this case. So we are going to confirm that, and then the other assertion that we're going to have is going to be get department name should be equal to what we sent in our requests. Okay, so we are going to say is equal to, and then our expected value should be the same as what we had created. Right, so those are the few assertions that we can be able to make on our test class for creating the department. So let me just run this one with coverage. So I'm going to run that particular test once again with coverage. Alright, so we can give the test a few seconds to run. But then I can open the debug console to see what is happening. Alright, so our application is started, and you can see that we have that. And then we are running our tests. Right, you can see that there is this particular insert statement, and then there is a select statement which is going to list the data. You can see that everything now works okay with the listing of the creating of the department. And if we check on the coverage, you can see that we have been able to cover, in one particular test case, we have been able to cover the post mapping and the get mapping. Now we'll be proceeding with the remaining 3 to finalize the test. So remember to subscribe, click on the notification icon to get notifications whenever we upload new videos of the same kind. So in our next session, we'll be proceeding with the get, put, and delete mappings. Alright, so that's simply the integration testing. As you can see that automatically we are starting the entire application. We are able to run the entities and at the same time run the test against the test container, and you can see that the SQL commands that are being generated for each particular test. Thank you for watching the video. Remember to subscribe and share. Thank you.